My name is Chet. I live in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and I'm the CEO of QuikTrip, which I consider to be really, honest to goodness, probably the best job extant. I don't know what you'd find that would be a better gig, because I get to get up out of bed every single morning, and because I'm financially secure, which makes things simpler, I get to go to bed with, or get to go to work with this purpose to provide an opportunity for our employees to grow and succeed, and that's literally why I get out of bed in the morning. And it just so happens that by making our employees successful, we make our shareholders successful, we make our customers happy, and all that sort of thing. But it's hopefully in Kansas City, everybody's been in a QuikTrip store. Is that a fair statement? I mean, I don't want to be arrogant about it, but even if you hate our guts, hopefully you ran out of gas sometime and you had to go in. So you might be shocked, and I'm going to go through a slideshow really quick. I'm really interested in answering whatever questions you have, because otherwise I'm just guessing at what you want to hear about. So I'm going to get through it as quickly as possible, especially in a room where people have seen a QuikTrip and that sort of thing. Hopefully you know something about who we are and what we believe in and that sort of thing. But you might be surprised as a customer that the number one thing that we focus on isn't customer service, and it's not. Okay? I mean, what we really focus on is our employees. So let me tell you a little bit about QuikTrip. Okay, so who are we? We were started in 1958. It was started by my father, so for all of Neely talking about what a phenomenal CEO I am and all that sort of thing, I'm actually just a member of the Lucky Sperm Club. There's no way that I'm the smartest person at QuikTrip, but I am fortunate to have lucked into the job. Started in 1958 by my father, but it was actually, the idea for the business was actually from a friend of my dad's from school, a guy by the name of Bert Holmes. Fact of the matter is, Bert Holmes, there were only 300 convenience stores in the entire United States in 1958. It was an industry that didn't exist, okay, which is the only reason that we made it, is that there were only 300 competitors nationwide, okay? The reality is, if we'd started, and today there are 200,000 plus C-stores in the United States, for perspective, okay? If we'd started today, we would have gotten killed because we did so many things wrong to begin with. But Bert had seen 7-Elevens, which are ubiquitous now, but back then there were very few of them. They were based in Dallas. He happened to have seen some, and he said, you know what, that seems like a really neat business. And so he took my dad out to lunch, and he said, listen, my dad's name was Chester. He said, listen, Chester, I saw this business, and I love my job, but I think this is a really neat business. And because I love my job, I don't really want to go do it, but I'd pitch in some money. You hate your job, so why don't you go do this? And you come up with some money, and they did. So they came up with, between the two of them, $15,000 to start the company. Dad came up with $5,000 that he borrowed from his folks. That doesn't sound like much. That's $120,000 today. Okay, so that's real money. So Dad came up with $5, Bert came up with $5, and then they went out around town and found various other business people in Tulsa, Oklahoma, to come up with the other $5,000 as shareholders to start the business. So they started the business. We got into gasoline in 1972. You all probably all think of us as a gasoline station today, but the reality is that for almost half of our existence, we didn't even sell gasoline. We didn't even get serious about selling gasoline till about 1984. I mean, the way we got into the gasoline business in 1972 was that we stuck a gas pump on the front sidewalk. We were like, woo, we're in the gas business, right? Just proof positive that we did everything wrong the first time, and thank God we didn't have any competitors, because we wouldn't have made it. As a matter of fact, we decided, I've gone back and looked at the notes, I was just barely out of diapers in 1972, believe it or not. I know I don't look like it, but I really am only that old. But I went back and I looked at the minutes from the board meeting that was held, where they decided to get into the gasoline business. That board meeting was held in the back of a van on the way to an OU football game. Swear to God, okay? This is a big, monumental decision, and that's how they made decisions for our company back in 1972. But by 1984, we started getting serious about the gasoline business and grew into be I think, a really good gasoline retailer in the scheme of things. These days, we've got over 14,000 employees. We're in about 10 major cities nationwide. And nationwide probably isn't fair, but from one side of the country to the other. There we go. 685 stores in 10 markets. I think it's 685. We open a store a week, and candidly, I've been traveling all this week, and I don't know if we've opened one. So it may be 686, but I think it's 685. Approximately $11 billion in annual revenue, but that's cheating because we sell gasoline, and gasoline could be $4 a gallon, it could be $2 a gallon. I wish it was 79 cents a gallon and that our revenue was lower. And you don't really make much money on gasoline. By the time that makes us sound really big, and we stick our chests out and we say we're big, we're red, we're tough, but we're one of the largest not-for-profit businesses in the entire country if you were to look at our statements, okay? That's just not a real statistic. Number 30 on the Forbes list of privately held companies, number 48 on the Fortune list of best places to work. And all of that is really truly because we're based on a strong culture. I would tell you that it really is a lot like a cult. The people who leave QuikTrip, that little turnover that we have, those people think we are absolutely bonkers crazy because they don't fit, because we made a hiring mistake, because we hire based on some very specific values. There are core values. If you're a reader of Good to Great or Built to Last or any of those books, we cheated whenever we went on this little journey to try to figure out what our core values were. Oh boy, got way ahead, didn't I? First core value is that we only want to hire people, and I want to be very specific about this. A lot of companies have core values. We found them. Okay, you don't sit down and say this is what we want to be when we grow up. If you're really going to talk about your core values, you say, okay, what is it about this company? If you go through and look at all the people who work here, what do they have in common? Okay, it's not that you aspire to these values, it's that this is who we are. Good or bad, this is what people who work at QuikTrip have in common. And so whenever we figured that out, then we went on a quest to say, you know what, we're only going to hire people who have these same values. Doesn't mean that they don't have other values, they probably do. But the ones we have in common, we need to make sure we hire based on those. And so we were talking here before lunch about how do we find these employees, how do we screen for employees, and it's this. We screen based on these values. And if we find people with these values, which is rare, not because they're the best values or anything, but because this combination is rare, then we hire them. So the first one is we want to find people who want to be the best. And that means people who are hyper competitive. Okay? They want to be the best at every single thing they do. If there's a sport and they aren't any good at it, they don't want to play. Okay? And that's me. Okay? I don't play golf because I am so bad at it that God laughs whenever I pick up a golf club, okay? I don't want to have anything to do with it. And that's exactly the people that we're trying to hire. We also want to hire people who are never satisfied, which may sound very similar to be the best, but it's not. Because it's possible that you could get to where you're the best at something. So we're looking for people who are the best, and even when they're the best at it, they're still never satisfied, okay? Which is exhausting. I can tell you, I've got 14,000 employees who are never satisfied. If you think your employees whine a lot, you have no freaking idea, all right? I'm hiring whiners intentionally because they're never satisfied. But that means we're constantly evolving, constantly iterating, constantly changing things. If you notice that we remodel our stores, it seems like constantly, it's because we're never satisfied. In a lot of the markets, and I'm not being arrogant about it, but in a lot of the markets, we are the best at what we do, and yet we're still not satisfied. Which can also be very capital depleting, by the way. We have an institutional paranoia that if we aren't that way, that some competitor someday is going to come and knock our block off. And we just can't have that. And so that's a key core value for us. This is actually a poster that's in our office, and it's not by us, it's from David Glass from Walmart, but it's very applicable to QuikTrip, the quote. It's hard to read, so I'll read it for you. Every day in Africa, a gazelle wakes up knowing it must outrun the fastest lion or it will die. And yet each day a lion wakes up knowing it must outrun the slowest gazelle or it's going to starve to death. You know, it really doesn't matter whether you're a gazelle or a lion. When you get up, you better start running. And that's our attitude at QuikTrip. If you ever see those red shirts running like crazy, it's because we're hiring people who want to do that every single day. And I'm one of those people. I'm still bummed out that I'm not working in the stores anymore because it was a lot more fun. Another core value. Come on, there we go. Focus long term, which is a lot easier whenever you're private. We are private. I can't imagine us not being private because the way that we do business would not be a popular story to tell on Wall Street at all. I mean, let's face it, for me to go for an IPO and talk to people who might buy stock and say, we're not in it for the shareholder, we're trying to make our employees rich. That's the reason I get out of bed every morning. Can you imagine that being a good sell? Not at all. But being private, how many of you guys work at a private organization of some kind? Okay, so you have some idea of the flexibility that it gives you and not having to worry about what you do this quarter, not having to worry about what you do this year. Candidly, most everything that we spend money on any given day is important 10, 15, 20 years from now. Almost all of our capital investments are based on what we want to be 10, 15, even especially 20 years from now. We're looking for people who want to do what's right for QuikTrip, which sounds very self-serving, right? What that's really about is that we're looking for people who are interested in team sports, team ball, Okay, this is not the person, I'm a tennis player, okay, so I'm a little bit of an exception from a sports standpoint, but I'm very interested in my team being successful. And there are definitely people like that in the world, and there are people who are interested in personal success. Neither one is better or worse, but you're not going to fit in at QuikTrip if you're not interested in the success of the team. Okay, we are absolutely positively, and I'll tell any employee at QuikTrip at this, we are not interested in saving Private Ryan. Okay, it's a great movie, love it. Cried my eyes out, but that is not what QuikTrip's about. We're interested in the entire platoon. All of our compensation, all of our entire reward system is based on team success. Every employee in the company is paid on exactly the same metric. Okay? We were talking again a little bit earlier about how we have shared labor in the store. There's no division of labor. I mean, everybody cleans the bathrooms, everybody mops the floor, it doesn't matter what your position is, and everybody runs a register. Okay? And they drop what they're doing to go take care of a customer, hopefully, right? The reason for that is because they're paid as a team, okay? All their bonuses, and it's 20% of their pay, is based on how good a job they do taking care of you guys. And they're paid based on how good a job the team does, not the individual. Even the mystery shopper deal, if you were not at the register, it doesn't matter. Whoever was on the clock is being scored right then whenever that mystery shopper comes in. So we are hiring people who are interested in that, because if they weren't, they would be absolutely miserable if they were being measured as a team all the time instead of being measured individually. And then lastly, and most importantly, we are looking for employees who, no matter what, want to do the right thing, which sounds really swell, doesn't it? I mean, who would say they don't want to do the right thing? But the reality is that is one of the ones that is the most difficult, because we are screening for people who would even be willing to be paid less in the long run, although it doesn't work out that way, okay? They would be willing to be paid less. They would be willing for QuikTrip to make less money so long as we are doing the right thing every day. What does it mean to do the right thing? Well, it's about ethics and morals and all that sort of thing. But really at its root, the way we tell employees that we expect them to measure that is if at the end of the day, would you be proud to tell your mother what you did today? Okay, very simple. Not your dad, because your dad can justify just about anything, all right? But your mom, could you go home today and look your mom in the eye and tell her what you did today and be proud about it? Okay? Not your best day necessarily, but is there anything in that day that you would not want to tell her? Because if so, you probably didn't do the right thing. Okay? So we hire people based on these values, and then we make an enormous number of decisions for the business based on these values. Every single one of them. Focusing long term, a desire to be the best, never being satisfied, doing what's right for QuikTrip, which is a statement about fairness, egalitarian kind of an approach, as opposed to more of a hierarchical approach to the business, the way we manage and the way we reward and all those sorts of things, and then especially do the right thing. I could not even begin to list the number of products that we don't carry because we would not be able to look our mom in the eye at the end of the day if we carried that product. Some of the companies where we've turned down $20, $30 million vendor agreements because they wanted us to advertise in a way that we thought wasn't appropriate, advertise their product in a way that wasn't appropriate. So clearly, we are willing to sacrifice profitability of the organization in the short run to make sure that we live up to these goals, because you know what? I hired all these people who have these values. If we didn't follow them, they would mutiny. They would tie me up, they would throw me out in the ditch, and they would set me on fire, okay? Because they are so passionate about these things. So that's what we do, is we hire these people, and these people either love it or hate it. If we've hired wrong, then they hate it, and they self-select. Almost all of our turnover is in the first 3 months. If you've been with us for 3 months, odds are you're going to be with us for 15 years, 20 years, even if it means you're working in the store the whole time, okay? So we won't give these values up, that's pretty clear. Let's see. Why do we do this? That's our purpose, and that's what I opened with. Sorry, this thing's giving me fits. To provide an opportunity for our employees to grow and succeed, which I know sounds pretty cheesy, and you probably think that I'm full of it. But I do believe that most of the people at QuikTrip, once they've been there a fair amount of time, that is what they believe in. I can't tell you how many managers who've been with us for 30 years are proud of the employees who they raised, their night assistant, their clerk who went on to become a vice president, right? They really, really get jazzed about that if we've hired the right people. I certainly get jazzed about it, and it really is the reason that I go to work every day. It just so happens, in my belief, and certainly in our experience, that if the number one thing that we focus on is making sure that we take care of the employees, if we've hired the right people, which is important, you can't hire creeps, okay? But if you didn't hire creeps, if you hired good people with consistent aligned values, and then you go and try to make them successful, or at least give them an opportunity to be successful, you're going to be a successful organization, at least in our industry. Now, we were talking before lunch. I understand, and we are very self-aware of the fact that we are not doing anything that complicated. Okay, so that may not work for all industries. I don't know. It's the only place I've ever worked. Okay, I can tell you that in a service, pure service organization, that is a strategy that's been very successful.